Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, the so-called change bloc has done it on paper. A historic but still pending government led by Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett inching one step closer to ending Israel's repeating election loop. Meanwhile, Israelis in Jerusalem preparing for the nation's first Pride March of 2021. Massive news announced overnight, roughly just 35 minutes shy of the midnight deadline on Wednesday. Knesset opposition leader and Yesh Atid party chair Yair Lapid declaring success in forming a government, or at least he's successful in theory.
אדוני הנשיא, אני מצטער לך להגיד שעלה בידי להקים ממשלה עם סיעות יש עתיד, ימינה, כחול לבן, רע"מ, תקווה חדשה, מרץ ומפלגת העבודה, כולם ביחד, כולם חתמו לי, כולם הודיעו לי שעלה בידי מבחינתם, אז אני מצטער להודיע לך שעלה בידי להקים ממשלה.
Likely out of excitement, leader of the anti-Netanyahu change bloc, Yair Lapid, forgetting to mention the Israel Beitenu party as his eighth and final supporter in declaring that Israel may soon have a new government. And the proposed Broad Unity Coalition, including an Arab Islamic party for the first time in Israel's history, led by the center-left Lapid and the right-wing nationalist Naftali Bennett from Yamina, with Bennett poised to serve as prime minister for the first half of the four-year term. Hundreds of Israelis on the streets overnight, likewise celebrating a possible end to the stalled election process.
My fellow protesters and I were in the streets for more than a year, so it's a great celebration. We're hopeful for this change, for a better future for this wonderful state. That's why we're here.
We're celebrating formation of new government. For 2 years, Israel hasn't had any government. We have had several elections that were endless, and now we are hopeful for a new stable government.
The coalition not yet finalized, though. It must still be ratified with a vote of confidence in the Knesset, which President Rivlin and Yair Lapid are urging to be convened as soon as possible. And this request is much easier said than done. Opponents to the listing, including Prime Minister Netanyahu and Knesset Speaker Yariv Levin, who are working hard to delay the vote for as long as possible. The idea being to buy enough time to sway members of the change bloc to defect, which may prove successful in the coming days before the vote. Meantime, cracks in the foundation of the proposed unity government already forming. Under massive pressure from right-wing and Yamina voters, Yamina MK Amichai Shikli for the first to jump ship, vowing to vote against the coalition and leaving it with a narrow 61-seat majority. And several other MKs are reportedly thinking of following suit, and the loss of just one more MK would doom the new government before it even begins. Many in the public likewise unconvinced at the change bloc's stability.
Yeah, I was against. I think it's not really a feasible government the way it's put together, but you know, I'm always hopeful and wish them luck.
There are two versions. One says that this will never last. It's too heterogenic. It's too crazy. They will fight over any topic you can have in mind. The other version says that Israel needs a government so badly that they will have so much work to do. They need to pass a budget. They need to pass many resolutions that are waiting for a new government. And they will have the big enemy, Netanyahu, as head of the opposition, and this will be the glue that will keep them together if this government will even be formed.
So will the coalition receive a vote of confidence? And even if it does, what then? Joining me to discuss is political analyst Orly Rappaport and former Yesh Atid Knesset member Rabbi Dov Lippman. Rabbi and Orly, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to be here.
All right, Rabbi, I'm going to start with you. How are you feeling last night at 11:30 p.m.?
First of all, I think there was a collective sigh throughout Israel because there was an actual possibility of a government. Put aside exactly the details and everything else, just the fact that maybe this is happening. I'll go a step further. I personally really like the fact that people from right wing to left wing came together and are trying to make this work. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but I think for Israel overall, that's a very positive step. And the last part of that is the Ram party. The fact that we could argue right-wing, left-wing all we want, but the fact that we're moving towards a point where an Arab party in Israel is willing to make a step towards being part of the Israeli government, I think that for us as a society, that's a very good sign. So whether or not this lasts, whether or not it even gets sworn in, which we'll talk about,
we're getting to that.
It still was a very positive development overall for Israel.
Oli, was that your take?
I'll tell you what, I want to first of all speak about the Arab party joining, which makes Dov very, very happy. Rabbi Dov very happy, and many people in Israel very happy. There's another side of Israel, the right wing, that is not very happy. And putting aside the fact that Netanyahu was willing to do the exact same thing, which he was, and maybe even offer them more for their support, I think that the hope for an Arab government was not for an Arab party, in the government, was not for this Arab party. We were hoping, people in Israel were hoping for a Zionist Arab party, and the Israeli Arabs who are Zionists do exist in Israel, and we believe that in pretty large amounts as well. The fact, though, that Mansour Abbas was willing to say, and Ram say, that we will put aside right now, let's say, the ideology, to put it so, to focus on the Arab society is something that makes us and me personally happy. I would have preferred an Arab Zionist party as well as everyone in the right wing, and then we wouldn't even have this problem. Yes, I was sitting from 10 p.m., I think. I did not understand, by the way, they were showing on different channels. There was like Eretz Nederet and another TV. Like, are you kidding me? We're sitting here biting our nails, waiting to see what will happen, and you're putting on some, like, amusement shows? But I did wait till midnight. I did hear the news about Nir Orbach from Yamina Party and the developments there. My personal view on that was that I hardly doubt that he will be the one to break Naftali Bennett's government. Something that needs to be understood by many people at home, that they've been walking together for a very, very long time, many, many years since Naftali Bennett joined the Beit Yehudi party. I think it was 2013. Taking back from that point in time, to have Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked leave Beit Yehudi, Nir Orbach stayed with Beit Yehudi and kept in a way working with and being in very close contact with Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. When Nir Orbach wanted to wed head-to-head with Hagit Moshe in Jerusalem for heading the Beit Yehudi, Netanyahu supported Hagit Moshe from Jerusalem, and he left. He lost. He lost in that battle for heading Beit Yehudi. And still, Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked gave him a very realistic place, number 5, I think it is, in the Yamina party. So him being a member of the Knesset right now is owed to Naftali Bennett, that kind of, sorry to say, on TV, saved his ass and brought him back into the public life.
He's unlikely to defect.
So I'm saying that he is, even with all the sounds being heard and all the complaints being made against him and the pressure that he's been having, he does have a lot to thank Naftali Bennett for, which is why I doubt if he will make the move to stop from Naftali Bennett being prime minister.
So let's talk about the numbers again, though, and we'll come back to Ram and the Arab parties as well. But let's talk about the numbers. We have 61 seats. It's a very, very narrow majority. Just one Knesset member needs to defect, and then the whole thing is kaput. Rabbi, who do you see as maybe the weak link in the chain, in a sense?
So it's interesting. A 61-seat government, on the one hand, can be a disaster because you can have every one member of Knesset trying to pull away one another. On the other hand, it could be very positive in the sense that if you have the right coalition chairman who knows how to weave it and work it through it, which is the number one question.
And by the way,
Nir Orbach was supposed to be in that position, but they want to find a way for this to last. They do. So people on the left wing, for example, Meretz, they finally have an opportunity to be in the ministries. Tamar Zandberg, I worked with her on environmental issues. Now she's the minister. She doesn't want to break that by saying something or pushing a left-wing agenda too far. Naftali Bennett...
She already threw in a bill to advance LGBTQ rights, which is great, but the point is that,
any bills that have been thrown out in the 24th Knesset so far are not part of this government. Once this government moves forward, I do not think you're going to see...
That was part of her agreement with Lapid.
So that's part of what we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see when it's all said and done. Remember, for a government to be sworn in, we have to see the coalition agreements for everyone to see. That's the moment where I'll be able to look at you and say, do I think this can work or not? Because if anyone is pushing a left-wing agenda or a more right-wing agenda, it's not going to work. If they're able to find a way to put that aside and say, let's manage the economy, health, create unity, get a budget passed without anything extreme, it has a chance of lasting a certain amount of time. But again, it's going to be very, very tenuous. As we see, they can't even get to the 61 just for their very first vote.
So, Orly, yeah, go ahead.
Already I have comments. First of all, people seem to have forgotten that there are internal affairs in Israel as well, to what Dov just said. And I tend to agree. There are a lot of internal affairs that need to be taken care of. So putting aside a moment the annexation and other, the Arabs and many things that have been that had the focus on them, are not going to move aside. We have Joe Biden as president of the United States. Many things are not going to happen in any way. The other thing is that even there's a question about the government being formed because of the one hand that may fall. And then they're saying right now we've seen that the suggestion to have the meeting to replace Yariv Levin.
Oh, yeah, as Knesset Speaker.
So
sure.
right now, exactly. So Neil Orbach's hand drew out, but then the Joint Arab Party joined their fingers, 6 fingers, for this vote.
From the outside, yeah.
From the outside, but they voted for having this meeting adjourned and for moving Yariv Levin from his position as the head of the Knesset.
Yeah.
So we are seeing some weird cooperation here, and if one hand does fall, we might see, and I understand that people are working on it behind the scenes, we might see 1 or 2 members of the Arab Party, the joint Arab parties, vote for the government, which is something that Naftali Bennett is not necessarily interested in, but it may happen, and I'm not sure if at this point he can go back and say, "I will not."
I want to talk now a little bit more about the Arab parties, because as you mentioned before, there are Arab Zionists in Israel who are just fine living in a Jewish identity state, but their representation in the Knesset is minimal, it seems. And now you have the Islamic Ram party, which is coming in, a conservative party, and you have, arguably any other identity in the joint list, which is now from the opposite. So, meanwhile, we have, I'll give you another example with Yamina. Many Yamina voters who back Naftali Bennett to form a right-wing government are now said to be abandoning him, or rather, they feel betrayed by him. Do you think that a similar phenomenon is going to happen with Ram, where this might come back to bite him, or is he going to be seen now as the new pragmatic best choice for an efficient Arab representation?
He needs this government to be formed so he can bring achievements to the Arabs who voted for him. That's the bottom line. And based on his achievements, we're not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily the Communist law that he's fighting for the
Arab,
illegal Arab constructions or whatever.
Which is not even Arab construction. It's just the illegal demolition of construction.
That is more popular with the Arab community.
It predominantly hurts them more, yeah.
Yes, it hurts them more, even though in the end we want everybody to obey to the law in Israel. So I'm not sure if this is necessarily what he should be going for, but the budgets that he's getting them, and if he can develop the community, the society, the Arab society, then he can come back with many more votes, because we know that the Joint Arab Party is not doing anything for the Arabs in Israel. They're only preoccupied with the Palestinians in Gaza and Ramallah.
And this is what we noticed in the polls. The reason why the joint list fell in the polls, because there is that population in Israel who just wants to have good lives for themselves, and they're sick of their politicians only talking about all the nationalistic issues. And this is going to be the test for Abbas, because if he does push at all on the more radical Islamic or nationalistic issues, there's no way Naftali Bennett, at a certain point, is going to break apart over that. If there's a security issue, let's say with Gaza, and Abbas pushes too far and doesn't allow the government, so to speak, to do what it has to do for Israel's security, it won't work. This is actually an opportunity for an Arab leader in Israel to actually represent
the needs of the people. So far he's doing that. He already, as part of his agreement, he secured several $1 billion, or I think it was 100 billion shekels over the next 30 years, something like that, for advancements in the Arab community.
Correct, and I think that's a very positive development, because there is infrastructure that there are needs that they have as a community, and now they actually have a government that's working towards it with a representative from the Arab community. Again, it'll be tested. This is part of the problem that I've had with the more right wing saying left wing, left wing, left wing. This is an interesting experiment.
He has a lot riding on his shoulders, I think, too, because this could easily go the other way. That if he, in a sense, so to speak, fails the Arab-Israeli community, it could be a long time before there's another Arab party in the government.
Yes, but you can see that there are voices within the Arab world, Arab Zionist world, that are starting to speak louder and louder. It started with the conflict in Gaza now that they got more popularity. I think there is also a chance that in the future we will see a real Arab Zionist party.
All right, well, we have a lot more to discuss. I know we can talk about this forever.
Sure.
But we have about, I'd say, arguably a week before, maybe a little longer before the vote of no confidence. We'll see what happens until then. Orly Rappaport, Rabbi Dov Lipman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In other news, June marks annual Pride Month, and in Israel, the LGBTQ plus pride parades and marches are already getting underway. Beginning in the capital at 2:30 p.m. Thursday afternoon, the Jerusalem March for Pride and Tolerance kicking off with a rally in Liberty Bell Park and then ending in Independence Park after the march. Unlike in previous years, however, there will be no rally at the end of the Jerusalem Pride March. Rather, a special online Pride event will be broadcast to Facebook Live and to YouTube by the Jerusalem Open House. And the event includes musical performances and hot-button panel discussions. A small counter-protest, meantime, approved near Liberty Park, and police already have arrested 2 teens for putting up protest signs in the city center. It's not clear what those teens did that was illegal. Finally, next week on June 11, the Tel Aviv Pride Parade set to begin, but counter to the somber tone of the Jerusalem events, the Tel Aviv Pride includes, but is not limited to, activities for the whole family, stalls put up across the city, and huge parties with DJs along the beach. The event typically drawing massive crowds from all over the country, as well as the global LGBTQ plus community. Now, with coronavirus in Israel under practical control, Israeli schools returning in full to normalcy. Students at the Interdisciplinary Center in IDC Herzliya celebrating their classroom homecomings.
After, a year of being on Zoom and being isolated from the rest of the world, it's just been so amazing to see everyone, to be back in person, to have this infrastructure and to have the ability to come together as the university that we are, as this community, as this family.
It's been nice seeing people that you haven't seen in a long time. A lot of people have been at home in their home country, and it's been a wonderful time just seeing everybody again.
Coming back to campus, it's incredible, actually see the teachers face to face, having proper discussions, seeing who we actually talk to, and just sitting on the grass and eating lunch together.
You can work on new projects, do meetings. Frontal people is so much more different than just on Zoom when people have their cameras off. You don't feel connected. And now, except the fact that you don't have space in the parking lot, this is amazing.
Because there are lots of benefits in Zoom. In Zoom, we have the ability to watch a recording and we can make coffee while we're in class, but it still doesn't beat the in-person environment and the interaction that we get.
Business and entrepreneurship, it's a degree where it's very hands-on and it's a lot of group work and you have to work as a team, and to be able to meet together as a team and work together, it makes a very significant impact on the results and what you guys are able to do together.
So in my one course, which is called Biotech Entrepreneurship, which is an amazing course, it's very geared towards building a venture in the field of biotechnology. So now we actually can meet the professor in person. We can sit in breakout rooms, not physical breakout rooms, sit with them in person with our classmates. We can sit and we can plan and we can use the facilities of IDC. So being back has really helped that experience.
IDC is amazing, the campus is beautiful, our teachers are incredibly caring also, and now we get to know that much better.
So it's been an absolute blessing to be at this university and to have this ability to go back. All around the world, people are still studying online, and we are fortunate enough to have this experience.
And joining us now in the studio with more on the return to campus and the start of a new fall 2021 school semester, Jonathan Davis, Vice President of External Relations at the IDC Herzliya, and Jonathan Dar, Business and Entrepreneurship Student at the IDC Herzliya. Thank you both so much for being with me today. I'm really excited to speak with you guys. Jonathan, you're both Jonathans, but I'm going to start over this to my Jonathan to my left. Who's coming back to campus and when?
Well, they all want to come back to campus because the quality of life in Israel is just so much better than in so many other places in the world right now. Because of Corona, because of other stuff, because of anti-Semitism. And when I see the students at IDC Herzliya throwing the frisbee on the grass outside the dorms and having a great time, they seem quite resilient. And they're in Israel at the right time. They got a chance to see maybe a new prime minister. They got a chance to see a new president. They got a chance to see a new head of the Mossad. A lot of action taking place. They were, during the air raid sirens, they got to go to a shelter 2 or 3 times. They have a lot more stuff on their CV as a result of their visit to Israel.
That's for sure. Jonathan, what about you? When did you get back?
I came back, I think, right when Passover started. Came back, and then I had spent time with the family, hung out. Corona was over and everything, so it was just wonderful to finally be able to spend time with my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles. I have a ton of family here, so it was just a wonderful experience coming back.
That's excellent. All right, so I guess I should say, with everything coronavirus related coming down and to a close, what has the school done to prepare for the influx of these students?
What we've done to prepare basically is we've had to make sure that those who need to be quarantined were quarantined. We went out and we vaccinated most of the students who wanted to be vaccinated through their insurance plan at IDC Herzliya.
What's the percentage, do you know?
It's about 90%.
Wow.
90% of our students, maybe more, are vaccinated. They voted with their feet. And basically now it's a matter of those people who have been vaccinated overseas, when they come back here, they need to do a serological test, so we refer them to the serological test. So we try and provide them with the excellence of beating bureaucracy and getting here in one piece. That's something that we take pride in. So we spend a lot of time with the various ministries here and with the various bureaucracies here to make it a tender, loving care landing in this country.
All right. Were there any requirements that were placed on the student body to return that you maybe had to?
As a campus, we wanted to stay safe and everything, and so there was a requirement to have a green pass to be able to come onto campus. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that is now over with on June 1st.
It's now over.
Yeah, correct. But while things were still, kind of in a little bit of iffiness, and we just wanted to see everything's all right, that was a requirement at the time.
All right, so you didn't it doesn't sound like you had any troubles getting back here, though, for the most part.
No, I did not. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what would you say is the most attractive feature drawing people back to IDC's campus right now?
I think that what draws back a lot of people to campus is, number one, the fact that they would prefer to study frontally rather than by Zoom, and we're conducting classes now on campus. That's one reason. The second reason is definitely social. For the last 4 days, there has been blaring music outside of my office in Radzyner Square, where I can't even hear myself.
You make that sound bad.
Well, it kind of reminds me of the way things used to be. I wish I could be a student again.
I'll second that as well. I was just on campus today, and Netta Barzilai, the Eurovision winner, she had a concert, and there was just a ton of people.
Oh, nice.
And if you were trying to work, I can understand them completely. A little bit hectic, but
she's distracting in a good way.
In the best way.
In a good way.
Best way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows that they can learn more about IDC Herzliya and about the coming fall semester that begins this October after the holidays. You can learn more at rris.adc.ac.il. We'll put that in the graphic below. Jonathan, thank you so much.
To JDs, say thank you to Aaron.
To JDs, that's right.
Right.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast with Chana Rifkin.
Okay, so this weekend, temperatures are heating back up. Lows this evening at 13 degrees in the north, 19 in the center, and 21 with dust storms in the south. Then Friday and Saturday, highs will be 30 degrees in the north, 27 in the center, and 35 in the south, where skies will clear back up as well. And now back to the studio with Aaron.
Thank you, Chana. Now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
אי אפשר לנהל שום עסק, אחוז הניצול, הם שמו כסף, אנחנו השארנו את זה בכנסת. הם שמו כסף, טעות על טעות על טעות על טעות, תוסיפו את נתב"ג שזה...
All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.25 shekels to the American dollar and 2.7 shekels to the Canadian dollar. And finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as to our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.